The one issue with United, for somebody on a pay-as-you-play deal, is that they're not in Europe.
Pay us what we want and that it will get done eventually.
But if they really want him, then get it done.
Is he just sitting around going, well, look, it would be nice just once to taste playing for one of the historical huge clubs?
Why not? Why wouldn't United not want that?
Hello and welcome to Transfers Exposed. This is your hot ticket to the latest transfer stories directly from the Sunsport newsroom throughout the transfer window until the window slams shut on September the 1st. That is Dean Scoggins, the Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun, and I am Will Pugh, back after a week off, during which I was replaced by The Sun's Head of Sport, Sean Custis, where Dean and Sean gaily declared that he was a huge upgrade on me, and outrageously, Dino, you let Sean, I know he's your boss, he's all of our bosses, but you let him just go away for about half an episode extolling the virtues of Lionel Messi to his beloved Newcastle.
We had to persuade him to get in the studio, didn't we? I had to get him here somehow, and then we had Charlie White in my seat as well. So
of course, yeah.
It was the Sunsport youth policy, replacing us for a week. But,
exactly.
But they did a fine job, the pair of them.
They very much
It's very
did.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, Transfers Exposed and Arsenal Exposed, that Arsenal special episode that we brought in Charlie to do. Both of those were brilliant watching, so go back and have a look at those if you so wish. Dino, we've got some huge stories to cover today, as you described it on last week's episode. This is the transfer that keeps on giving in Viktor Gyokeres, which we'll get onto later in the episode. But focus on Manchester United, a Sunsport exclusive story that we have published on the website this afternoon and will, of course, be in Wednesday's paper. Manchester United linked with, offered to, approached one, 3 free agents, all of whom are centre forwards. Exciting stuff. Tell me who they are.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, as you say, free there. I'm just imagining Jim Ratcliffe going, free, you say? Free, after all that money that they've got to save. So, yeah, first of all, Jamie Vardy, Callum Wilson and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So, absolutely brilliant story where, obviously, Rasmus Højlund probably the one that is going to go out of the door, whether it's sold or on loan.
If they can get rid of him.
If they can get somebody to take him. And therefore, you're going to need more strikers. I don't think it will just be one of these.
No, cool.
But, there's Joshua Zirkzee there as well, obviously. But yeah, I mean, we understand it. There's a variety of reporters working on this at the moment. We've got Charlie White working on it. We've got Jack Russell working on it. We've got Martin Blackburn working on it, as well as Gary Stonehouse from the Newcastle point of view. So where should we start? Callum Wilson?
Well, that's a good idea, I think. Obviously, these are going to be like the secondary, probably tertiary centre forwards by the time the transfer window is done. But Callum Wilson, shall I do the details?
Yeah, you go for it.
All right, so Callum Wilson, obviously Newcastle didn't trigger his 1-year extension that they had in his contract. He was on about 45 grand a week basic at Newcastle. They didn't fancy triggering that deal, but they did offer him a pay-as-you-play deal. Now, Wilson turned that down because he was significantly worried about a lack of game time. I mean, Isak up front, perfectly understandable. He was worried that his money wouldn't quite get to the level that he would need it to be.
And also injury issues as well. So you can see that from both sets, where Newcastle probably think it's time now, we need a more reliable backup to Isak, and Wilson's thinking, well, if I can stay fit, I want to play more than just be Isak's backup. So there's two ways of looking at that for sure.
But the interesting part of this story is that Wilson it's been, people have been made aware that he would be up for accepting a similar type of deal at a club at which he's going to play more. Now, Manchester United they've been offered Callum Wilson. Very important to say that it's not United that have, in this instance, that it's not United that have gone out pursuing him. Leeds and Everton want a striker immediately and are both keen on Wilson, but you feel that maybe they would have done that deal. 47 goals in 113 Newcastle appearances. Now, if Wilson's saying that he didn't want the pay-as-you-play at Newcastle, again, he's one of the great strikers on the planet at the moment, but he feels that he's willing and that he would maybe accept a similar style deal, very heavily incentivised at United, that would sort of suggest he feels he's going to get more game time there. Does that ring true to you?
I think that you've absolutely hit the nail on the head with the comment of that this is being offered. Okay, he's been offered around. It's a striker who's free, so obviously the agents and
Earning
and
his
his
money.
team are pushing him out there. So we're not as far to say as that United want him at this stage.
No.
Hopefully we'll get an answer to that, overnight in the coming couple of days where they stand on him. But I do think you're right. The one issue with United for somebody on a pay-as-you-play deal is that they're not in Europe. And so you would think that if you were going to be on a pay-as-you-play deal, you want to be a club that's going to play probably 60 games in the year, because even then with your substitute appearances and your European appearances and your Carabao Cup appearances, you're going to get up to what you would deem a quality Premier League wage. So it surprises me that it would very much surprise me if he ended up at Manchester United. But obviously for a club like United, who are going to spend big money or have spent big money on Cunha, the Mbermo deal is edging along almost slower than the Gyokeres to Arsenal deal.
Yeah, what on earth will we talk about transfers exposed when that's done?
So they're going to spend big money, so there will be other positions that they've got to be economical with. And this suggests that the backup, or as you say, the third choice striker would be one of those. Yeah,
well, United, first of all, we'll get onto this in a minute when we talk about Vardy. United will obviously they're going to have to do lots of business before they sort of make a deal for a backup striker, in that they need to get loads of players out the door. We all know the names already: Rashford, Sancho, Anthony, you've mentioned
Garnacho.
Rasmus Højlund, of course, Garnacho as well. Just very quickly, so obviously they'll have to get all them out, then they'll want to bring in a first choice striker, whoever that may be, Gyokeres, Sesko, whatever merry-go-round that spits out in the end. But just quickly, what you know from a tactical point of view, Callum Wilson, an Amorim type player in that 3-4-3 he wants to play?
He's a very clever player, that's what I would say. He's one of those that all coaches are very, very big fans of, because he can adapt his game. He's played throughout his career either as the out 9, he's played as the second striker. At the beginning at Newcastle, when there was lots of movement with Joe Linton and in integration with different positions, he was fine at it. He's a clever guy, he's a good footballer, and he would be able to come on in any of those front three positions as a substitute and pick up the baton. I don't see it. I don't see it happening, but that's not just because of anything to do with Wilson's ability or whatever. I just think that with they've had their fingers burned, United, for, haven't they, with the Odion Igalos and the Wout Weghorst and stuff like that. By the way, he's a lot better than both of those, but it's the injury record and stuff like that. I just. The only reason I could see it getting done is if they need somebody late on, he's not already agreed a deal, and then obviously the pay-as-you-play thing becomes quite a tasty option.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move on to Calvert-Lewin now, and this applies to all three of these players we're going to talk about. Obviously, Leeds and Everton, who are keen on Wilson, those clubs they won't be able to wait forever. No. So it's kind of a balancing act. If Wilson does want to wait for one of the, forgive me, Leeds and Everton fans, but bigger clubs, and to go and be a backup there, as opposed to probably more chance of being a number one at one of those clubs, you can't afford to dilly-dally too much. So it's a bit of a balancing act. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Dino?
Yeah, a great story. This was in Sunday's paper, but it's Alan Nixon exclusive, and that Amorim actually they want Calvert-Lewin.
Now, this is the one they've approached.
Yes, they've approached into talks. By the way, they'll want to know where he's at from a fitness point of view. There'll be a lot of medical issues and tests to be done before that is done. But look, the one thing that struck me straight away about it is he's sort of an unfulfilled talent, right?
Big time.
Yeah, England striker. If he'd stayed fit for, I'm not saying first choice, but he would have been in and around a squad that people like Dominic Solanke or whatever. He is an England quality level on ability. He just hasn't managed to stay fit. 2 or 3 games last year, didn't score any goals. But the one thing that struck me about it straight away was those games where Amorim threw Maguire up front late on, right? That's what we're talking about with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. We're talking about when you want to be more direct, you want to send balls into the box, and you want to get someone who can be very, very good in the air and physical in the box, and he's the sort of person who can do that. So yeah, look, United, again, exploring their options. He would be not a lot of money as in wage-wise. Obviously, it's a free transfer. He's played, he's was it 26 games last year? But again, he's 28 years old. He's got international goals under his belt.
3 goals, 2 assists last season. Again, hampered by injuries. He did get a bit of game time, but it's almost It's a bit of a sad story almost, isn't
He
it?
is.
It sounds
Yeah.
silly describing footballers like that, I know, but it does seem
there
a
was
bit
that
sad.
injury that he had last year when he
Yeah.
was just coming back to fitness, and you could see the whole of Goodison sort of, their hearts just, go out to him because he's clearly a nice lad, and a hard worker, and he just can't catch a break. So maybe United is the break he could catch.
Yeah, he's left Everton in pursuit of that fresh start. Do you think where he's at in his career, football-wise, that United and being a backup striker is what he needs? Or do you think, given perhaps he's thinking that his body's perhaps not up to being able to play to the rigours of a 45, 50 game season, that perhaps actually being a backup is where he's going to... bigger time is where he's earning his money?
Yeah, that's a good point, but I don't think United will go there if they think that his body's not up to playing extended game time. I think that will be the key.
But one game a week is different. I know it sounds a ridiculous thing to say, but playing two.
Absolutely, yeah. And they need, as you say, look, by the end of last season, they're throwing Harry Maguire up front, and you'd have much rather had an option of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So I just really hope he gets fit, whether he goes to somewhere like Leeds. We were talking earlier on about Newcastle exploring backup striker options. Maybe they feel like he's more suited to being the backup striker than Callum Wilson was. And there are other clubs looking for...
wouldn't it?
Yeah,
I know he's younger. The DCL's Calvert-Lewin's 28. God, I'm doing a U there to call him by... Yeah, that's worse than when you call them by their first name.
I'm going to keep that one. But yeah, look, Tottenham have looked at him as well. Tottenham have looked at him because, again, a good option to have.
Solanke light?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And look, if he got himself really fit again, then he'd fancy his chances. He's not. You don't get to the top level of professional football without fancying yourself of going up against people of similar ability. So look, I just hope he gets fit, and then the next club is a really good thing for him because, as we said, quality footballer just needs a bit of luck.
Yeah, just get a bit of that confidence back. Heavily incentivised deal as well is the approach that was made. So again, not quite effectively a pay as you play. With all these pay as you play things, not like they're on no money.
No,
they'll be getting a basic of around 20 to 30 grand a week. Plus, they could earn up to 100 if they play the games.
Yeah, all those massive add-ons.
Exactly.
A bit like when my missus books a holiday and then adds on the lounge and the private transfer and all that as well.
Yeah. Obviously, I've never been in a private lounge before, but this is the deputy head of Sun Sport here. Jamie Vardy, Dino, a man who no doubt has tasted the luxuries of a private jet in his time, although still smashes his cans of Red Bull, going back to his grassroots football days before every game. Big Jamie Vardy, 38 years of age, grizzled old Premier League stalwart, legend that he is, left Leicester, of course, after 13 years. Now, this is an interesting one. He's the third one, been offered to Manchester United, the story this afternoon. 38, now 10 years older than Dominic Calvert-Lewin. You do sense with this one, I find it really, really intriguing. Now, Mike Anstead, head of content on the sports desk for The Sun, chatting this afternoon, said to me, look, if he wanted to go to Leeds or to Wolves or to Everton or to the MLS or to any of the other destinations that were being talked about for Jamie Vardy after he left Leicester, that would have been done already. That deal would have been there for him. Therefore, is he just waiting around to try and... He's got one last chance to play for one of the historically massive clubs. Obviously, what he did at Leicester was one of the biggest sporting achievements ever. Is he just sitting around going, well, look, I'm not in a hurry. I'm sure I'll be able to get a deal somewhere come the end of the window if I really want one. But it would be nice just once to taste playing for one of the historical huge clubs.
It's a no-brainer for me, honestly, from both sides of it. And another one I would mention there is Saudi Arabia. If at the end of a window it hasn't quite worked out, and they're free agents, okay? So then they don't have to adhere to all the windows as well. They can wait and play the game. And look, he's had a phenomenal career. He's had that fairy tale career. So ending it at Man United, what could be better? Absolutely, honestly, no-brainer. And I think for the club as well. Why not? Why wouldn't United not want that? If you're playing at Old Trafford, the crowd's getting a little bit edgy. It's 20 minutes to go. You're either one behind or you're level on score, and you're getting loads of the ball, and you've got people buzzing around, and Amad Diallo and Bruno Fernandes with the ball. Jamie Vardy darting around the penalty area, lift the crowd up, fly into a tackle on a centre half, give it that to the to the opposition crowd, and just lift everyone up. I love it, and I really, really hope it happens. I absolutely hope it happens because it'd be a fantastic story. And look, let's be honest as well. He takes Premier League winning experience into the Man United dressing room as well.
Exactly that. 10 goals and 4 assists last season for a truly woeful Leicester side. So I know it's
when he was standing most of the time on the halfway line with his hands on his hips, waiting for Leicester to give him the ball. By the way, and a manager who didn't really want to play him. It was the snobbish Ruud van Nistelrooy striker mantra didn't quite fit for someone like Jamie Vardy.
No.
And that's a criticism of the manager, by the way, not of Jamie Vardy.
Of course.
And I just think it'd be great. You know full well he'll be still fit as a flea, and he'll be ready to go. And it would And as I say, Ratcliffe free, Amorim impact sub, Jamie Vardy, Man United, bang, let's do it.
And he will still, like exactly what we're saying. I do think it's an easy one to write up from a romantic point of view, or you can already see all the back pages during the season next season. It's great, but you feel like you would have something to offer. You're not gonna feel at all sort of turning your nose up at the prospect of Man United playing Jamie Vardy in the first few rounds of the FA Cup or the League Cup.
And what did we say time and time again on Tactics Exposed last year about United's front three and the lack of pace in behind?
Yep.
And all of a sudden you could be looking at Cunha and Burmo, and probably another top front man as well. But then if you all of a sudden end the game with Jamie Vardy, then you got pace all over the place.
Exactly. And as you've taught me many a time, Dino, that Amorim likes those wingers down the side, someone driving into the box, carry the ball in,
first time
big
finish,
Jamie, bang. Dino, talk to me, will you not, about, just for a change, Viktor Gyokeres to Arsenal. Jordan Davis, our Arsenal man, very helpful earlier on when I was chatting to him in the office. He is all over it, as reporters up and down the country and across Europe are. This is the saga of the summer, no doubt, so far. Now, there's not any huge developments today. However, there has been another sort of it's moved on a notch with the old row that's going on between him and Sporting Lisbon at the moment. What's the latest?
Yeah, and I think we've got to the point where they would take a loan deal, or the Gyokeres camp would take a loan deal as a sort of meeting point, that it would be a loan with an obligation to buy.
Yeah.
So, but that then is another option that comes within a deal of this size. I think we're going to be talking about around about 68, 69 million, something like that.
That's it. Charlie Wyatt, of course, wrote this week that Sporting are after 68.9 million, 60.3 up front, 8.6 in add-ons, and that Arsenal's sort of latest negotiating point even was that they would pay 64.6 in total, so 56 plus 8.6. But the sense being that no, we are Sporting are like, we know you want him. Yeah. We're not sticking to his 85 odd million pound release clause. Pay us what we want, and that it will get done eventually. But the latest being that the word out of Gyokeres' camp is that whatever happens, even if this Arsenal deal were to fall through, he's never playing for Sporting again. And if it doesn't, just sort of perhaps part of the negotiating thing and a bit of pressure from Gyokeres' camp onto Sporting to make them do the deal or push them close to agreeing a fee, saying, by the way, if you dig your heels in on this too much and he doesn't go to Arsenal, he's never playing for you again. Yeah. And we will demand a loan, very similar to what happened with Osimhen at Napoli. Is this good or bad for Arsenal fans?
Good or bad? Good or bad? I mean, it's bad that it's just taking so long. Like, I'm not for a second going to say that 3 or 4 million quid is to be sniffed at, right? It's silly, the fees we talk about in football compared to real life. But if they really want,
subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But if they really want him, then get it done. Just get it done and move on to the next one. I mean, if it is 3 or 4 million you're talking about, you're got to
draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, but you're basically for 3 or 4 million pounds, you're talking about one extra round of the Champions League.
Yeah,
that's what it means. A place in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So if they're not confident that he's going to take them to that next level, that they can pay 3 or 4 million pound extra to meet the valuation, then they've got the wrong guy.
Yeah, but they've only got about £7 million in extra prize money to gain from the Prem, haven't they?
I think it ends up getting done. I think Arsenal, it's obvious Arsenal don't want to be seen to just bowing down and buckling and just saying we'll just pay what everyone says.
Which is fair.
Absolutely fair, because that's the route that Man United went down for years when we talked about the Man United tax, and it was just quote 20 million more and Man United will pay it.
And Sporting are also going, well, look,
Yeah,
85 million is a release clause.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have to.
No, he signed that release clause, by the way, as well. So
exactly.
it's all a bit messy. And look, yeah, he would go on loan to another European club, not just Arsenal. And he should make that clear that he would be open to just as long as he doesn't have to go back to Sporting. So it's ended a bit sour. But look, is he going to be the man to take Arsenal to a title next year?
That's what I was going to ask you, Dino. Do you think the bitter way in which these negotiations are taking place, and to be fair to Arsenal, I don't think really it's bitter, or it's not at all. It's not really bitter on their side of things. They're just saying, look, we would like this player. This is how much we think he's worth. Negotiating in the usual fashion. The fallouts obviously happened between Gyokeres and Sporting, particularly Federico Varandas, who came out the other
very
week.
vocal, yeah.
So do you think, though, when negotiations or transfers happen in this manner, do you think that puts extra pressure, particularly as a lot of the bitterness appears to be coming from Gyokeres' camp? Does that put extra pressure on him next year to perform, if he does go to Arsenal, to be the man that he obviously thinks he is?
I think that if you're going to go for 70 million and as a striker to the Premier League, you're under a fair amount of pressure straight away anyway. So I don't know about extra pressure. I think he clearly believes in himself. And, despite the sorry time he had at Brighton and then the move to Coventry and the different places he's been, but he's worked very, very hard to get to where he is.
Yep.
And he's worked on his physique, he's worked on his physicality, his pace, and he was always a goal scorer. There was always a goal scorer in there somewhere. So I think he'll be backing himself to do it. These guys don't get to elite level performance if they're not fairly confident in themselves and not too worried about pressure.
We would have surely said the same thing about Rasmus Højlund.
Yeah, we probably would.
I
think this guy's been around the block a bit more than Rasmus Højlund. So, but look, it is the one. It is the one for Arsenal fans where they're wondering if this is the right move and the person that's going to take them to the title. Because, quite frankly, as we'll talk about a lot during this year, if Arteta doesn't do it this year, then when are you going to do it? And and if as we've said all the way through, they're just a striker short, then you can kind of see why Arsenal are taking a bit of time with it, because they need it to be right. This is they're not going to buy him and Sesko. Sesko being around about the same value,
85 million.
They're not going to go and they're not going to go down the Osimhen route. Obviously, they would have loved Isak. That's no secret. They would have loved Isak, but nobody's paying
a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, absolutely. But nobody's paying that 150 million to Newcastle at the moment. So if they see this guy as the one, which it seems it is, as it's edging closer, then it's got to work. Otherwise, Arsenal are left with a £70 million player that hasn't quite worked out, and I would say that the Emirates might turn a little bit next year.
Quite. Just one thing to be a little bit more positive about for Arsenal fans is a deal that has been done. Is Christian Norgaard. We spoke about this on Transfers Exposed the week before last. Actually, we reported it in FC in the Sun at the time, and Christian Norgaard to Arsenal expected to be announced on Thursday. A base deal of around 9 to 10 million quid, raising to around 12 with some add-ons. So good news for Arsenal fans there. Solid player there. One thing, interesting one, Dino, Sun exclusive this afternoon up on the website. Arsenal willing to include a player, if needs be, to get Eza over the line from Crystal Palace. Now, somewhat difficult at this early stage to say exactly who that player is. It's believed to be, or Sunsport understands it to be, a player with some who's played a few games for Arsenal, some Premier League experience, but very much a periphery sort of player. Difficult at this stage to speculate. Well, it's not difficult to. We can speculate, but
we could make a list. We don't know at the moment. So.
With that, obviously, I heard Sean and Charlie talking about it on the show last week. Do you think, especially in the PSR age, that Ethan Nwaneri was mentioned? Now, at this stage, we can't say whether or not it's him. Do you think a player of that type that Crystal Palace would be interested in that, or with a star asset like Eza? Do you think they're just going to be going, look, we're not interested?
Well, if it was
Give us the cash.
If it was Ethan Nwaneri, they'd obviously be interested, but I just don't see it. I mean, that'd be craziness, wouldn't it, for Arsenal to...
some reports suggesting that he's demanding a certain amount of minutes.
Yeah, well,
if
he's doing that, then he steps one step above his station, obviously. But I just... the thing that this screams of to
He
me,
plays more at Palace, doesn't he?
Yes, yeah, of course he does. Yeah. But there's Palace and Arsenal, and why are we talking about Eza coming out of Palace to go to Arsenal or Tottenham or whatever? It's Champions League football,
course,
right?
yeah.
So that's the difference. That's the elite level. Of course, Brian Burmo wasn't interested in Champions League football. He just wanted more money. But
God,
not that I'm bitter or that
Tottenham.
one. He hasn't even signed for United yet, and I'm already bitter. But yeah, the Eza thing, all it points to me is that Arsenal aren't willing to meet the valuation.
Yeah.
If Arsenal were trying to do a deal for a player to be included, they're not willing to pay the 68 million quid, which we know it's quite a complex deal because there's money to previous clubs to Palace, including QPR.
Yeah.
And then it's a structured deal as well, and Palace want it paid in a particular way. If Arsenal aren't willing to do that, then it feels a little bit like the next option is, what about this player that we might not need? And it's quite rare those happen, those transfers. And I think there's a lot more of clubs dealing with players to and from each other. But you're talking about homegrown players here, so from, as you mentioned, a PSR perspective, they're worth more on a balance sheet when they're homegrown, because their contract's value is larger, and it's pure profit. Yeah. So until we get a real name of who which the guys are working on to see who Arsenal may well offer in exchange, Palace are just going to sit there and go, the fee. And if Eza is wanting Arsenal instead of Tottenham, and that but that's fine. But that's fine, because that's different to Brian and Burmo. Okay, that is different. That is, if he's going to go and say, I've got more chance of winning a Premier League title at Arsenal than I have at Spurs, that's absolutely the case, isn't it? I think
that probably is the
that's
case.
The case. So that's okay. But but he's probably sat there now thinking, well, I've got two very, very good options on the table here, and they're in a position where Palace hold the cards and say, I would imagine Tottenham it's the case that Arsenal and Tottenham know what the salary's going to be. They know what the deal is. It's just a case of whether you can get a deal agreed with Palace. And Eza's probably sat there thinking, well, I'll wait for Arsenal to make their case, and he knows he's got a very, very good option in Spurs, Champions League football, and an increase in pay and a bigger, spotlight on him in a World Cup year. Then he's in a pretty good place, isn't he? Yeah, potentially Arsenal sort of testing the water, perhaps, or testing Palace's resolve to see if they may be interested. Don't rule out Liverpool. Not Liverpool. Don't rule out Newcastle coming to that party as well at some stage, because depending on what happens with Anthony Gordon. Yeah, you sense frenzy incoming, don't you? Right, Dino, let's wrap up with a couple of quick-fire ones. I know in my absence, you waited until I wasn't here to talk about a West Ham player. Absolutely classic. Mohammed Kudus, 24. Bit of a wrangling going on between our two teams at the moment. The West Ham wants 60 million quid, basically. Worth noting that Kudus, because I did hear you questioning last week whether West Ham, are they in a position to be demanding £60 million? You tell me, are they? I mean, you make a very good point, because he did score 5 goals and only got 3 assists in 32 Premier League appearances last season. The amount of time I spent tearing my hair out at his lack of end product, you would not believe. But 24 years old, West Ham wants 60 million. Sounds like 40 million now then. Exactly, yeah. I did think that the other day. I was expecting my phone to start ringing from those at West Ham going, what the hell are you doing? £85 million release clause. West Ham signed him for 45 million from Ajax in 2023. 3 years left on his deal, so there's money there. So it's not like he's got a year or two left. West Ham got a long time left in which to cash in. West Ham are in a precarious PSR position. They need to get some money in before they can spend anything. Graham Potter probably sitting there fretting at the moment. Spurs' initial bid, which was rejected, was £50 million, which included quite hefty add-ons relating to which declared that they would only be paid if Tottenham won the Premier League and the Champions League. West Ham's attitude and response to that in the boardroom was sort of, one of laughter and what the hell are they trying? Who the hell are they trying to kid? It's who we are, mate. Well, it's who you were, mate. Yeah. It seems a fair and reasonable response. Just talk to me quickly. I totally agree, by the way, about demanding 60 million based on last season's performance. The first season he was very, very good, clearly a player in there, excellent dribbling, but on West Ham they are well within their rights to demand that sort of money. Do you feel positive about that as a Tottenham fan? I feel that given Thomas Frank's record with forwards, Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins, Brian Mbeumo, Wissa, if he thinks that this guy's worth 50 million ish, that's good enough for me. And I think that the deal, the struggle for West Ham, clearly, as you mentioned, is PSR. Tottenham are masters of structuring deals so that if it doesn't quite go so well, then they don't end up paying all the money.
Yeah.
And Daniel Levy is
certainly saying
phenomenal.
If we win the Premier League, we'll pay you.
Yeah, I don't think we ever
got
got near 68 million for Tanguy and Ndombele, do you?
Quite.
So it's a. I think it seems to me like this is one that is a sensible offer with sensible add-ons. We're that far away from it being done.
Yeah, I respectfully those seem like a waste of ink. Those add-ons. Yeah, it's like what club? Is going to go?
That's what I mean.
Okay.
You're right. Of course, that's silly. But if there were add-ons which were 30 appearances in Premier League and Cups. Exactly. 10 goals or 20 goal involvements or something like that, and Spurs win a trophy, for example, then not the Premier League or Champions League. But
I texted a friend of mine very recently, very well connected in European football, but a Tottenham fan as well, and just said, Kudus to Tottenham, and his response was, FFS Levy, just go and pay 20 million extra and get Eze. What do you think?
I'm going to give you exactly the same answer that I gave when you asked that about Brian and Burmo. Why not both?
Why not both? What, Kudus and
Eze? Yeah. Okay. Eze at 10. Kudus on the right. Yeah. Happy days.
Don't worry about James Maddison and Brennan Johnson, your heroes last season.
Right,
Dina, very, very quickly, tell me what's going on with Anthony Elanga.
Well, Anthony Elanga, he's on his way to Newcastle. So Gary Stonehouse done very well on this story as well.
Flying in for
a Keelan Hughes story from the FC this morning. So agreement made, 60 million quid, Forest to Newcastle. And great stuff from Elanga today, because we know how quick he is, or we thought we knew how quick he was. He looks like he's got quicker over the summer. So he's clocked 10.9 for the 100 metres. You can watch that video on the Sun website. So he is hot-footing his way to St James's Park to have his medical done.
4-year deal.
4-year deal. He's probably going to get close to doubling his money from around the mid to late 40 mark at Forest up to the late 90s in Newcastle. Brilliant signing, I think, for Newcastle. Done a great job at Forest, but take the opportunity when it's there. Again, Champions League football, and a top pro as well. And he's obviously been working hard over the summer, so expect big things from Elanga and Isak this year.
Bosh. Thank you for tuning in to Transfers Exposed. I'm Will Pugh. This is Dean Scoggins, the Sun's Deputy Head of Sport. Make sure you stay with us for the entire transfer window for all of the latest updates on the comings and goings in the transfer market until the window slams shut on September the 1st. As always, make sure you're subscribed to Sun Sports YouTube channel, like and comment on this video, and we'll see you on Thursday.